The Minister of Justice, Felix Bolaños, writes sexist letters and messages to the head of the Judiciary to save the wife of the Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez. Let's begin. Hello everyone and welcome to a new edition of Precautionary Measures. Pay attention to the information we are going to reveal today in Precautionary Measures, which has a direct impact. It directly involves the Minister of Justice, Felix Bolaños, the Rasputin of Moncloa, and the President of the government himself, Pedro Sanchez. Pay close attention and watch until the end, you'll be surprised. The leftist government, the most progressive and feminist government in history, well, listen up Bolaños, is sending sexist messages and letters to the head of the Judiciary and President of the Supreme Court, Isabel Perelló, to try to save Begoña Gómez and get rid of Judge Peinado. We're going to share all the details of this information, as always showing it on screen. And by the way, if you haven't done it yet, remember to subscribe to the Medidas Cautelares channel. I know there are a lot of us, but there are still many who watch us and haven't done it yet. Just one click and you're subscribed, and now let's put this information on the screen. Let's get right into it, because this is very serious. First, let's show this photo so you can clearly see who each person is. Here, in black, wearing the robe, we can see the President of the General Council of the Judiciary and the Supreme Court, Isabel Perelló. To her left is the Minister of Justice, Felix Bolaños, you know, the Rasputin of Moncloa, and to her right, the President of Congress, Deputy Francina, and Minister Margarita Robles. Attention, the General Counsel of the Judiciary, CGPJ, has lashed out at the Minister of Justice, Felix Bolaños, because of the unacceptable and intolerable sexist text messages and letters. And this is exactly what he has been sending to President Isabel Perelló since she took office. Bolaños' candidates to preside over the CGPJ and the Supreme Court were left-wing magistrates from the High Court. Ana Ferrer from the Criminal Chamber, or Pilar Ramos Marteso from the Third Chamber or the Administrative Litigation Chamber. Finally, Perelló, also a left-wing magistrate but independent, was appointed president of the judicial governing body in September 2024 by the Council. Since then, Bolaños has not stopped pressuring her. Sources from the CGPJ we consulted say that the WhatsApp messages and letters Bolaños sends to Perelló are rude and disrespectful. The minister is out of control. He thinks that the General Counsel of the Judiciary is just another department of the Ministry of Justice, that President Perelló is his subordinate. Since the new council started working, he has tried to meddle with it and gets involved in everything. He doesn't respect the judges or the president, he criticizes her appointments, her statements in the media, he even blames her for the problems with the implementation of the new judicial reform. His messages are sexist and intolerable with an unusual arrogance. His reaction, they say, has been excessive so far, the same sources also tell us. Perelló has taken a cautious stance, but he has not left any of Bolaños' messages or letters unanswered, responding firmly, even though the pressure on Perelló began as soon as he took office. The attacks have intensified after the public statements made by the President of the Judiciary in various events in recent months. And what about the Begoña case? Gómez. Bolaños wants the CGPJ to take action against Judge Juan Carlos Peinado. In any case, even though the official in charge of disciplinary proceedings in the Council has stated in his report that the complaints from the Minister of Justice against the investigating judge cannot be addressed. The same sources consulted say that Bolaños is upset because he is being pressured in turn by Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. Who else would it be? The aim of this pressure. It's that Judge Peinado is stopped and that part of the investigation into his wife, Begoña Gómez, is halted. In any case, Sanchez's goal is to discredit Peinado at all costs for investigating his wife, and let that be a warning to others. For the rest of the judges who dare to investigate corruption cases related to his family, his government, or his party, look at what we are denouncing, the seriousness of these actions. Pedro Sanchez wants to get rid of Peinado no matter what because he is investigating his wife Begoña Gómez and he wants it to set an example. So that the rest of the judges who are investigating his corruption, the corruption of Sanchez, the government, the Socialist Party, his family, will step aside, be afraid, and not do their job. We're told Bolaños told Isabel Perelló that Peinado's actions in the investigation have been unacceptable and that he must be punished. Because if not, it would do great damage to the image of justice. The damage to the image of justice is being caused by you, who are truly shameless. Shameful, right? You have no shame the way you are manipulating the institutions. You have no shame, and on top of that, you say that Peinado is the one damaging justice. Unbelievable. However, they say that the Minister of Justice has missed his chance in the Peinado case. Since if the judge had committed a minor offense, that offense would already be time-barred. But if it were considered a serious or very serious offense, there wouldn't be enough time to investigate it in the council before his retirement next September. The CGPJ, we're told, can only sanction active judges. So, in the event that it was considered a serious or very serious offense, it would have to take longer than the 5 months Peinado has left before retirement, and therefore he would already be retired and the judge could not be sanctioned in any way. That's why we're told that Bolaños, knowing he can't do anything against Peinado anymore, puts on a show for the media, insulting Peinado and so on. Well, he says no personal insults, but anyway, he criticizes Peinado's work to justify himself to Sanchez. I mean, what a shame, what mediocrity, what moral misery to suck up to your boss, attack Judge Peinado, and put on an act as if you're so outraged, Felix Bolaños. What a shameful Minister of Justice we have in Spain, just as shameful as the Prime Minister we have. It should be noted that the Conservative Bloc has a majority in the Disciplinary Committee of the CGPJ. Since the new General Council of the Judiciary was formed, the Conservative Bloc considered it essential to have a majority in this committee, precisely to prevent possible purges by Pedro Sanchez's government against inconvenient judges like Peinado. That was one of the objectives of the CGPJ, the Conservative Bloc, and it was to try to maintain the majority in that disciplinary committee because they knew the government was going to go after judges who investigated their corruption. Anyway, it's also worth mentioning that the Standing Committee of the General Council of the Judiciary, the CGPJ, emphasized this very Tuesday the need to respect judicial proceedings, after the Minister of Justice Felix Bolaños stated that Judge Juan Carlos Peinado's decision to move forward with charges against Begoña Gómez, the wife of the Prime Minister, had embarrassed many citizens and many judges and magistrates. Bolaños stated that the investigation led by Peinado had damaged the good name of the justice system and that in many ways it would likely be irreparable. He also said he had absolute confidence. A higher court, impartial and independent, is going to overturn the investigating judge's decision to recommend that Begoña Gómez stand trial for alleged crimes of embezzlement, influence peddling, business corruption, and misappropriation. This is what Bolaños said. The CGPJ, through the Standing Committee, reproached him for these words, and Bolaños later reaffirmed those words. In other words, Bolaños is doubling down because he has to flatter and curry favor with Pedro Sanchez to remain as Minister of Justice. What a shame, Felix Bolaños. You are a disgrace. You outrage us Spanish citizens because as Minister of Justice you are mediocre, but as a sycophant to Pedro Sanchez you are beyond words. Leave the Spanish people alone, let the judges do their job, leave the President of the General Council of the Judiciary and the Supreme Court, Isabel Perelló, alone. Leave her alone. Don't be sexist, Bolaños. You think you're the alpha male of justice in Spain and that's why you send those messages, those emails and those letters to the president. The president already knows what she has to do. Leave her alone, leave her in peace, and don't be a sexist, Bolaños, because then you go around bragging that you're the leftist government of women, feminist, progressive and all that. What you are is a bunch of sexists, and not just in this case. You just have to look at what your former colleague José Luis Ábalos is doing, the whole investigation into the Coldo scandal involving women. You're all a bunch of sexists. Pedro Sanchez, who profited from his father-in-law's homosexual and heterosexual brothels. But how can you come here and lecture us about feminism? How can you come here and lecture us? You're a disgrace. Anyway. By the way, I've already told you that in the last few days we'll be responding to the questions and reflections you've sent us. And one that I've read in the last few hours after the last video is someone saying, how can you talk about conservative or leftist judges when they should just be judges, plain and simple? On this channel, above all, I always have to tell you the truth. I have to give you all the information. Are there left-wing and right-wing judges in Spain? Of course. How could there not be? Every person, everyone has their own political ideas, right? They can be left-wing or right-wing. Are there leftist magistrates and conservative or right-wing magistrates? Of course there are, we have to say it. Does this mean that they are independent though? That's the key. Because there are leftist magistrates and conservative magistrates who then do their work independently of their ideology, and that's what we demand of them. We don't demand that they have one political leaning or another, but that they do their work independently. And it must be said that, unfortunately, the majority or a large majority of leftist magistrates are more militant, more sectarian. That is, they do their work more according to their ideology than in any other way. And yet conservative magistrates tend to have more hang-ups, and in that aspect, it should be noted that they tend to be more independent on that issue. Obviously, everyone tends to generalize, because in the end there are left-wing and right-wing, good and bad judges. But obviously, what can't be denied is that they have political leanings, and some, unfortunately, are not able to set aside their political tendencies when carrying out their work. And this is the truth, so this is how things are, and I give you the information just as it is. Each of you can draw your own conclusions. But I of course can't tell you anything else because I know it from the inside and I know what I'm talking about, and I will always tell you the truth. And that's it for this edition of Medidas Cautelares. I hope you liked the video and what I shared with you, and if you did, lots of likes, lots of thumbs up, and share it. You already know that YouTube really values it when you like the videos. So this can reach more people, so the videos show up for anyone who goes on YouTube and sees Medidas Cautelares show up. So you have to give a lot of likes, leave a lot of positive comments, and of course constructive criticism is always welcome. Also, as you know, those who are just active, those who attack just to attack have no place of course on this channel, but constructive criticism is also welcome. Also, you can become members, like the chosen ones for less than 3 euros a month, or like the supreme ones for less than 7 euros a month. The most important thing, as I always tell you, is that this information reaches everyone because information is power. See you soon.